At number 68 on the iconic 100 countdown is the 1993 Magic the Gathering Black Lotus card. And here to talk to us about this day and its significance is Peter at Pettit Party on Instagram. Peter, I know you're a big Magic guy. I know you're a big non-sports guy. I hope I didn't break your heart with having this card at number 68, but it wasn't me. I voted it as number 21 on my particular list because this is it for Magic the Gathering. This is the card. Am I right?
Yeah, we had this conversation the other day too. I would have put it in the top 25 as well personally, but apparently other people aren't as cultured as you and I.
I love it. Well, tell me why it is the Magic card. Why is it that this is the one that we always see on all of the big, sort of like record sales for Magic Gathering? What is it about this card that makes it so significant?
Well, starting with Magic as a whole, Magic compared to like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic cards are about utility. What can they do for you when you're playing them? Why do you want to have this card in your deck? Why is it desirable for you to be able to lay it down on the playmat and have your opponent go and make a silly face when they see you drop it down? When it comes to overall absolute dumbfounding power, pretty well nothing beats the Lotus, because you put it down and you get to collect 3 mana of whatever color choice that you want. So since Magic revolves around managing your mana the right way and making sure you can play the cards when you need to be able to play them, being able to just plop this card down and instantly you get to gain 3 mana for the price of 1 card that doesn't cost you anything. I mean, it's a no-brainer why the thing was as overpowered as it was back in the day, and why it's out of the original Power 9 by far the most powerful of the Power 9, for lack of a better word, and most coveted out of all of them.
So as far as I understand it, and I'm aware of a little bit of this, but I'm no expert when it comes to Magic the Gathering, this Power 9 group is the 9 cards that are sort of the most important, the most powerful cards in all of Magic cards, at least as of that time that these cards were they came out when they were released. But this card is easily the one that is the most recognizable. How does it, like, talk to me about its rarity? Is it, I'm assuming it's not just a powerful card, it's also a pretty rare card too, right?
Yeah, so when you're talking your ABUs, your alpha, beta, unlimited, you've got your original alpha printing of the card, and they only released actually in the last year and a half, the print numbers on alpha and beta and unlimited. They actually only made about 1,000 alpha copies of this card. And the alpha decks were essentially used to just try and sell the concept of Magic the Gathering as a trading card game to people who were interested in possibly picking it up for their store. So as you know yourself, being at different conventions and stuff over the years, someone just hands you a free sample. Most of the time you say, oh yeah, thanks, and then out in the trash goes. So how many of these over the years that were originally not only just given out and thrown away immediately, but how many got lost in the shuffle of you're moving and, oh nuts, I left a moving box and now your Magic cards are gone, or oh no, I had a flood in my basement or my house burned down and there goes my 3 copies. So when you're saying there's only 1,000 made, that was 3 decades ago.
Yep.
There's probably only a few hundred alpha versions of the card left. Even when you're talking about beta, there's only about 3,000 beta copies and a few thousand unlimited copies. So when you're talking about the Black Lotus as this just iconic piece of not only Magic history, but trading card history as a whole, you only have a few shots of being able to even get this card because it's on what's called the reserve list. And for the uninitiated, basically, Wizards of the Coast put out a list back in the day and said, hey, we're going to stop reprinting these cards so you guys and gals who already own copies aren't going to keep getting your value of the cards that you own get diluted. So
Mm,
because it's on the reserve list, this card is supposedly never getting a reprint ever again. So essentially, however many copies are left in existence at this point after over the years, like I was saying, getting thrown out or destroyed. And like I said, this is an insanely playable card. So how many just got played into oblivion over the years? We'll never know. So the inherent low print run on especially the original copies, coupled with the fact that it was just played to death
yeah.
and a bunch of copies just got destroyed over the years. How many are left in the wild? How many realistically could you even potentially be able to buy at some point over the years?
I love how you've described this, because um, I like how you first talk about this card is powerful, so it was played a ton. Because what
Yep.
happens in my collector mind is, I think immediately what you just said, which is these are going to be used, they're going to be played a ton, and then there's not going to be very many that are left. And then you add to it the fact that it's been around for literally almost 3 decades. And they only have really 3 versions of this. And by the numbers that you just gave, you've got 1,000, a couple thousand, I feel like 6,000 cards total. And it's the face, not the face, it's the card of the franchise that people like me, people like all the sports cards collectors, the people out there who still yielded number 68 on this list.
Yep.
It's a known quantity, or it's a known card. And then add to it that there's going to be so few that are in great condition.
And
Are there?
this is where it gets tangly too. So to confuse you even more, there's a couple other printings, but we
Okay.
don't really talk about it. You generally talk your Alpha Beta Unlimited when it comes to this stuff.
Okay.
But besides that, you have this hardcore Magic mindset of a lot of people of freeing the card. So you'll actually have people who will grade a lot of these Power 9 cards just to make sure they're authentic and not altered. And there was one guy who actually made a YouTube video out of, oh yeah, it's authentic. I got a Beckett 9.5 for an Alpha Black Lotus. He cracked it out of the case and put it in his binder.
Wow.
So like when you look at the pop report on a lot of this stuff,
It's exaggerated.
it's ridiculously exaggerated
Hmm.
because a lot of people just cracked them out of the cases over the years. They just wanted to know, okay, it's real. It's not altered. It doesn't have a bit of coloring touch up. A lot of people used to do with some of their played copies is just take a Sharpie to the back of it, try to make it look nicer.
Oof,
Stuff like that.
man. I mean, that not the marking it up, but the idea that there are collectors that are passionate about the stuff that they're taking and they're saying, okay, I know it's real. I'm going to take it out of the holder. That speaks to me, because like that is a collector, right? Like that is
100%.
And to me, like what we've tried to do over the course of the last few years is we've tried to make this hobby of ours like a sexier thing, right? Like we're popular, we're cool, we're doing all this stuff. Let me tell you, at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is whether people actually want to own the card. You have to have
100%.
an end user, somebody who wants to own it. And those people are known as collectors. And so as I think about how you just described that right there, it makes sense to me why, I mean, for a million different reasons, it makes sense to me why it's as recognized and it's as important as it is. And what it does is it makes me feel like, you and I were right. It should be a lot higher on the list. And I think what I think happened when people were filling this out, because a lot of the people who filled this out obviously were sports card collectors first. I did send it to about 20 people who are strictly non-sports. So there's definitely like some real non-sports voting going on here. But
Yeah.
But the people who voted on this, who were largely sports people, like I think what they did is they looked at it and they said, here it is at 68. It beat out the Dan Marino rookie card. It beat out the Joe DiMaggio. It beat out the Ty Cobb 1914 Cracker Jack. It beat out the 2001 EX Michael Jordan card. It beat out a lot of very iconic, very valuable sports cards. What I think it illustrates to me is two things. One, there's a lot of sports cards that are really like iconic and recognizable. And two, even though there are so many of those, people still recognize that this card is one of the most important and iconic cards ever made.
And going to, the whole recognizable aspect of the card, one of the things they actually told the original Magic artists when Wizards of the Coast was actually commissioning a lot of these artworks, they said, hey, for the Power 9 cards in particular, they're like, hey, we want you to be able to just make a simple design that someone from like 10, 15 feet away is going to be able to see it and be, oh, that's a Black Lotus. And be able to look at it from a tiny little piece of cardboard, like I'm saying, 10, 15 feet away, not being able to read what it is, but just see that iconic artwork that Christopher Rush did in this case with the Black Lotus. It's timeless. Like, it's a literal piece of art. You compare that to some of the, more flashy stuff that comes out now with Magic, and they don't hold a candle to it, in my opinion. And last little bit of funny backstory, like, the whole thing behind it was they thought it was funny that in a fantasy setting with, like dragons and wizards and mages and all these, powerful relics like swords or amulets and rings, things that are typically, in your Tolkien and Dungeons and Dragons type fantasy, those are typically what holds, all this enormous power, these vestiges of power. And then they just found it hilarious that in Magic, they were just going to make a flower be super powerful. And I think that story behind it makes it just that much more of an item that makes you think, this is really a piece of history, and this is why I want to own the thing.
I love
if
it.
That makes any sense.
And the last thing that I'll say about it is we have a collector who's done a number of these iconic 100 videos with us named Kiki, Croatian twins. And I asked Kiki about how his collection's going. He's collecting PSA 1s of all of the most iconic recognizable cards. And I said, what cards do you need? He said, there's only one card I need left, and it's the Black Lotus, because you can't find, and it's really interesting. I mean, he's got several $1 million collection, but he wants a PSA 1 of the Black Lotus, and I don't believe it exists. And if it does, he's never been able to find somebody to be able to get it. So
no one wants to sell these cards. It's just so iconic, especially from a lot of people's childhoods, that they just don't want to part with them. And if you're playing any of these old school decks, you need them. So you're not going to sell a card you need for your deck.
Should have been higher is the only thing, Peter. It should have been higher. So with that said, that is number 68 on the Iconic 100 countdown. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another guest with card number 67. And until then, happy collecting.